In this video, we're going to talk about the exception handling in Python. Errors that occur at runtime after passing the syntax test are called exceptions or logical errors. The try block lets you test a block of code for exceptions, and the except block lets you handle the error. When Python encounters a try statement, it attempts to execute the statements inside the body, and if the try block raises an error, the except block will be executed. And if there's no error, the control passes to the next statement after the try and except. And then here's the syntax. So a try block followed by a body of code, and then an except block that follows an error type, and then the body of code that will handle this error. And then here's a short list of Python exceptions such as arithmetic error, raised when an error occurs in numeric calculations, assertion error, raised when an assert statement fails, name error when a variable does not exist, index error, one of the most common ones, raised when an index of a sequence does not exist, and type error when two different types are combined, and we've seen this in the past, and the exception is the superclass of all exception types. And then here's a complete list of Python exceptions. And if you're interested, you can look into this, but you don't have to memorize any of them. And let's do some examples in Python shell. And now let's try exception handling with an example. So here I'm going to define a function. So this function is division, which will take a and b as two parameters, and it will return a divided by b. So let's save this program. Now in order to run this function, we have two options. We can actually call the division with two arguments, but I'm going to try something different now. I'm gonna see what happens if I run this. First thing, notice that nothing happens because in this program we actually we run the program, but we did not make a specific call to division function so it can run. So one thing we could do is we can run this program with a -i. What that means is it's going to run the program, but it will also keep a Python shell open. So we can actually call the division function as many times as one with any values that we prefer. So let's try one example. So 2 and 5 will return 0.4. Let's do 10 versus 2 will return 5. However, what happens if I pass 10 and 0? The program will crash. Crash means that it's going to raise an error, and there's a very specific error called zero division error. So how can we handle this? We can put this part of the code, try, and so we can put it in a try and except block, and then the type of error that we're specifically looking for is zero division error. Okay, so now what we can do, we can figure out how we want to handle it. There's multiple ways that we can handle it. One thing you could do is you can print or return an error message. But what I really want to do is I can say return 0. So this is my way of handling that kind of error. So let's try it. First thing I need to do is I need to exit from Python shell, and I need to rerun the program with -i, so with interactive Python shell. Now let's go back to our 10 and 2 example. So 5.0, and let's try with 10 and 0. We get 0 out. So we prevented the program from basically crashing, and we were able to handle the exception on our own. And let's remember some of the other error types that could happen, and we've seen them all, but let's try one of them. So you have an x that is set to 5. Now Python shell knows x, so I can call x without any problem. If I say x plus y, I'm going to get a name error, very specific. Name y is not defined. And this was a very common error. The other type of error that we saw was, let's say I have an ABC plus 1, 2, 3. And this time I'm going to get a type error. Must be str, not int. And one other that could happen a lot is, let's say we have a list lst that has 1, 2, 3. So basically has 3 members. If I index it, let's say lst0 return 1, lst2 3. But if I say lst5, I'll get an index error, list index out of range. And let's do one more thing. This time I'm going to import the math class. Then remember the math.sqrt. So this is a function that can take any value. Let's say take 4 and will return 2. But if I pass a negative value to this, I will get a value error, so math domain error.